Is the real ambergris in this fragrance worth it, or is it just a gimmick? Let's find out in this video. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Off, and I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Les Indémodables Ambre Suprême. These reviews are for fragrances that I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears in many situations, and meant to give you a general idea of what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I don't really like to go into details about notes and accords. I don't think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. I'm so very excited to talk about today's fragrance. As you may know, as I mentioned in other videos, sometimes it takes me a while to get through some of my favorite fragrances. This one here, Les Indémodables Ambre Suprême, is one of those. It actually made it in my top 10 fragrances of all time. I have a very strong emotional connection, very strong emotional reaction to this scent, and for fragrances like this that do this to me, I have a hard time finding words to put into a review, especially for scents like this, which are very abstract, very complex, incredibly difficult to describe. This one here is absolutely magnificent. It just puts me in such a good mood. It just vibrates my day at the right frequency. It just starts my day with the best positive attitude ever. Les Indémodables is a house that I actually discovered quite recently. I discovered it at the start of last year. It's a house that is very difficult to find in Switzerland, and I think that they only have one distributor. This distributor happens to be in Lugano, and it happens to be a very specific, very weird distributor. I already told this story in the past, potentially in my review for Vanilla Van, another masterpiece by the brand. Anyway, I go down to Lugano, where the only retailer is, and I'm really surprised because I get there and I find that this retailer is actually some sort of a physio studio, some sort of a new age physio studio. It was a really weird experience because I ring the doorbell, this guy opens, I ask about the brand, he lets me in, and he just starts talking and talking and talking. And don't get me wrong, I really like a good sales assistant, but this guy wasn't trained for that. He was a physiotherapist, and he was one of those people that is very difficult to interrupt once he gets going. You know the type. Anyway, I'm the kind of customer that walks into a shop with a very clear idea. I know exactly what I want. I know exactly what I want to sample. But this guy just keeps me there almost for like 45 minutes to an hour just talking about the brand. And I felt really bad for him because he was so enthusiastic, so I just kept listening. At the end of this friendly yet slightly overwhelming conversation, I walk out of the studio with Ambre Suprême and Vanilla Van. The rest is history. I got enamored by the brand. I truly think that they're one of the best brands on the market today. I really recommend the brand, especially the Discovery set. And if you haven't watched the speed dating episode where I covered a sample set, to do yourself a favor, go check it out. Not because the video is anything special or anything like that, but the sample set is just so worth discovering. So why do I love this brand so much? Les Indémodables, at least on paper, seems like one of those brands that wouldn't necessarily appeal to me. They have a very focused French approach, very traditional. Their fragrances seem simple in concept and in execution. Yes, they have high-end ingredients, but the fragrances are also very expensive. Everything is wrapped up in this aura of elitism. If you know me, all of these ingredients put together would make for something that is not necessarily to my appeal, not necessarily to my interest. So why do I like the brand so much? Well, it all comes down to the perfumes. The perfumes are masterfully created. They're beautifully put together. They're so elegantly crafted. All of them are pretty much masterpieces. They're so elegant, so delicate, so focused. They're so high quality. These things basically put most other modern perfumes to shame. They're so elegant, so sophisticated, yet without any frills, without any extra luxury. Ambre Suprême is definitely one of the best representations from the house. Going back to Ambre Suprême, going back to what it is in my intro, this fragrance is characterized and is well known mainly for one of its ingredients. This fragrance contains a high percentage of ambergris. Ambergris is actually one of my favorite notes in perfumery. It's one of the most exhilarating notes that I've ever smelled. I actually smelled the real thing. And for all of you guys that don't know what ambergris is basically an animalic note. It's an animalic compound found within sperm whales. Basically, these whales eat squid and they don't digest certain parts of the squid, namely the beak. These beaks sit in the whale's stomach for a super long time, and in order to protect the stomach lining, the whale excretes this compound, which basically bonds to any undigested matter, including these beaks, until eventually this ball of stuff gets expelled, either by front or by back. I know it sounds absolutely disgusting, but this mass of vomit and or poop basically floats around the ocean for God knows how long, and is beaten down by the sun. It starts picking up on the saltiness of the ocean, on the ocean smells and aromas. Eventually, it lands on a beach where it's collected by humans. It sounds completely crazy, it sounds like a made-up story, but humans are attracted by the smelly things. They're attracted by weird smells. Even tracing back to traditional perfumery, Ambre has always been this rare, exclusive, and elusive, luxurious raw material. Absolutely crazy. I've actually smelled the real thing. I smelled it in Milano during Excellence. I didn't smell it at Excellence, but I smelled it at this hotel that had a perfumery laboratory. And basically in this laboratory, there were jars containing all kinds of rare ingredients used for perfumery. One of them contained Ambre. I was completely mesmerized by the smell. I even liked the raw smell of the real thing. Ambre is so important in perfumery even today that one of the more well-known popular synthetic compounds, ambroxan, is designed to replicate the smell of this. So can you tell the difference between the synthetic and the real thing? That is the question. Is the use of real Ambre in this fragrance only a gimmick, only a marketing ploy, or can you actually tell the difference? Well, in my opinion and from my experience, yes, you can tell the difference. At least I think I can. The real Ambre has so many nuances, so many facets, so many layers to unpeel. It's really, really crazy. And I know this because I have other fragrances based on real Ambre, and they all have this commonality. The fake stuff could potentially be really good, but every time I smell ambroxan, at least in my experience, it just comes across as very, very monotone. There's no density, there's no complexity to it. And to be fair, ambroxan is usually mostly used to enhance projection, to enhance presence, to give body to the fragrance. And there are various degrees of ambroxan. There's good quality, bad quality, etc. But the real Ambre just has so much complexity. So back to Ambre Suprême. Is this just an Ambre fragrance? Is this the only selling point of this scent? Absolutely not. Les Indémodables took the magnificent foundation of Ambre, really elevated the scent profile with beautiful florals and aldehydes, creating this classy, elegant, clean fragrance. This is basically a masterclass in sophisticated perfumery, but we're going to talk about the scent profile and our experience after we cover the presentation. Presentation for Les Indémodables products is short and sweet. The bottles, the fragrances themselves look very, very clean, very minimalistic, very straight to the point. Are they worth the 220 euros asking price for 50 ml? That is the real question. I do think that they lack a little bit of luxury feeling, especially for that price. But overall, I really like the brand identity. I really like how the brand is focused on the juice, on the perfume, rather than the presentation. The bottles themselves, as I said, look very, very minimalistic. I really like the iconic design. It could be a little bit better in terms of quality and materials. The cap is very plasticky. It's a little bit light. It's friction based. It just feels a little bit part spin. Again, I like the design, but they could have gone for a little bit more of a luxurious material. The bottle itself though is incredibly clear, very, very transparent, beautiful glass. It's incredibly resistant to fingerprint given how transparent and shiny it is for whatever reason. They might have one of those coatings similar to Homme Luxury, who knows. I just like the design overall. The font is good, the labeling is good. The labeling is actually painted on. It's super well done. It just feels luxurious. The atomizer assembly for Les Indémodables is above average, but not too great. It sprays a lot of liquid, it's easy to aim, but it lacks that beautiful pressurized action that Dior and other brands have. Let's give it a couple sprays. By the way, I've been wearing this fragrance as my scent of the day, as I usually do when I film these reviews, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I learned to spray more and more, and that really impacted the wear experience, but I'll get to that later down the road. In the office, this comes across as super clean, super luxurious, very, very elegant, yet understated. It's all due to the Ambre and the special effect that Ambre has. Again, we're going to talk about it later. Going back to the presentation, as I said, everything is incredibly straightforward, simple, and minimalistic, even down to the brochures and the boxes. The boxes are very, very thin cardboard. They don't feel luxurious at all. And again, given the asking price of 220 euros for 50 ml, which is indeed steep and way above average, it's a little bit hard to justify. I just wish that it would be a little bit more luxurious, namely the cap. Overall though, and that might be just me being a fanboy talking, I actually feel that the asking price for these fragrances is almost somewhat justified, especially given how unique and exceptional these perfumes are. Ambre Suprême might be just the first bottle that I get a backup of. I like it that much. I'm so afraid of running out. I'm so protective of this scent. As I mentioned, the distribution for the brand is absolutely terrible. In Switzerland, we only have one retailer, and that's really not good. I'm not really sure about the presence on discounters, especially overseas. Do your digging, but again, in my opinion, they're totally worth even retail. But onto the scent profile and wear experience for Ambre Suprême by Les Indémodables. What does this actually smell like? Well, to describe the scent in a very simplistic manner, which is barely scratching the surface, I would say that this is a very floral, very aldehydic, soapy fragrance with a marine backbone. That's pretty much it. But again, as I said, it's barely scratching the surface. This fragrance is subtly complex. It has so many facets to uncover, so many facets to discover. And every time I wear it, I discover a little bit more. I get a little bit more from the scent. I get a little bit more from the experience. It's absolutely magical. I love wearing this. As I said before, it puts me in such a beautiful, optimistic mood. It's such a great way to start the day. One of the strange, unique things about this scent, at least to me, is that the more I wear it, the more wears I put in, the more I get familiar with the scent profile, the more I start perceiving all of the ingredients at once instead of in various phases. Initially, when I would spray it on, I would be immediately hit with a giant soapy aldehyde, and only after about 45 minutes to an hour, I would start picking up on the subtleties of the ambergris. Now I smell the ambergris right away. The ambergris to me is front and center in the scent. It really elevates the scent profile. It gives this fragrance so much shine, so much brightness, so much effervescence. Basically, the best way to describe this fragrance, in my opinion, is effervescent, is luminous, is luxurious, sparkling. It's so subtly sophisticated, it's so beautiful, it's so bright. And the bright, shiny nature of this is actually what gives it its very unique wear experience. It's so invigorating, so uplifting. It just brings light and joy to your day. I really want to underline this effervescent, luminous aspect in this fragrance because Antoine Lee, the perfumer for this, did a masterful job at elevating the natural ambergris facets and the natural ambergris vibe. I talk about this every time I mention the note, but ambergris has this very special effect which is difficult to describe and pinpoint. Basically, ambergris gives you this effortless cleanliness, this effortless sophistication, and in this fragrance, this aspect is elevated to the max. The florals, the aldehydes really push this aspect, really push this vibe up and in your face. I really like how the florals are pronounced here, but they're not vivid. It's very difficult to pick them apart. You don't really know which florals are in here. It's so beautifully put together, so elegantly crafted. If you're not a fan of soapy aldehydes, this fragrance will be a hard swallow, especially in the beginning. But given the fact that I'm assuming that you got a sample of this, because I really do recommend that, wear your sample multiple times, wait it out, wait for the ambergris to show its head. When it does, you're gonna be floored. This slightly funky marine component, when it shows up, especially on skin, because this fragrance has to be worn on skin, is so magical. It adds so much complexity to your skin chemistry. It just smells like your skin, but better. This is exactly one of those scents, and I like it so much for that. It just smells so incredibly luxurious, so refined, so sophisticated in its simplicity. Other than the adaptation period kind of required to really identify all of the sophisticated ingredients in this fragrance, the scent itself doesn't really evolve much or transition. Yes, it starts out fairly floral and aldehydic, and it dries down to this relatively funky marine ambergris, but the transition is super slow, very subtle, and so well tailored, so you're not really noticing huge changes in the scent itself. Overall, the scent is very predictable, very stable, super wearable, very likable. The animalic components in here are slight. Again, you're pinpointing it to the marine aspect of ambergris. But other than that, I don't think that this is stinky at all. It's not foul, it's not fishy, it's not rancid or pissy. It's just very beautiful. And the animalic component binds to your skin in such a natural human way. But other than the scent profile, which by the way, I really like, what really makes this fragrance is actually the wear experience. This is so effervescent, so bright, so luminous, as I mentioned before. This basically sits in the mid-tone to top tone of the tonal range. It's so uplifting, so beautiful. At the same time though, this rumbling animalic thing that really binds to your skin, this rumbling ambergris, has a lot of density. It never goes down in the tone range. It's never heavy, it's never cloying, never dark, but it's always easy to perceive. And even in the skin scent phase, this is so pleasant, so beautiful. It's like a background music to your day. It just sits there and it just adds complexity. It's like the perfect amount of seasoning on your favorite dish, and when you get the salt right, everything comes together in a beautiful way. The effervescence in here is just so mind-bogglingly beautiful, so bright, so luminous, so sparkling. And I feel that other than the natural effervescence of the ambergris, This is elevated by possibly the cardamom, maybe the pink pepper. It's just so well done. It's so incredible. Although this fragrance for me was love first sniff, I do fully realize that this fragrance, this type of fragrance, this wear experience, this scent profile is not necessarily for everyone. Some may say that it even leans a little bit feminine. I think that this is beautifully unisex, perfectly unisex. And it's just such a masterfully done fragrance. I really appreciate the artistry behind it, above liking the scent profile. So give it a chance, give it a little bit of time, get a sample of this, just wear it and learn to enjoy it. And if you absolutely do not like florals, if you don't like soapiness, by all means, this might not be for you. But I'm so adamant in just pushing this to people. I really don't want to gatekeep it. I really want everyone to get your nose on this and try it out. But time to talk about some practicalities, starting off with performance. Performance for Ambre Suprême is actually very satisfying, very good. In the past, when I first talked about this fragrance, I actually lamented below average performance. I was a little bit disappointed in that regard. I don't know what changed, if my mindset, if my fragrance has matured, or if I'm just spraying more. But overall, with my current spray routine, I get a very, very satisfying performance of 8 hours plus. And the scent profile, especially in its skin scent phase, is still very detectable, still very beautiful. It still accompanies me in a beautiful sillage bubble. As I mentioned before, the overall projection and wear curve is masterfully done, very smooth and linear, no abrupt jumps or jarring drops. It's super smooth and I really like it overall. The projection upon initial spray is loud, but not room filling. This is a very elegant, sophisticated, simple fragrance that needs time to develop, and it's not stepping on anyone's toes. It's really not meant for that. When talking actual versatility in use cases, I do feel that Ambre Suprême is very, very versatile. It's a little bit more of a daytime scent given how bright, luminous, and effervescent it is, but within the daytime, you can pretty much wear this in every situation, casual to elegant, work or leisure. It's just so versatile. You can pretty much wear this in all seasons. This is a really good signature scent. It just comes across as classy, clean, sophisticated, yet understated. It's not stepping on anyone's toes. It just blends in with the skin chemistry, it blends in with the mood. You come across as clean and professional. It's absolutely amazing. Again, in the evening, I wouldn't necessarily pull this off. It's a little bit more fresh, a little bit more clean. It's a little bit more of a day starter scent. In the evening, you can easily transition to other offerings by Les Indémodables, like Vanilla Van. That would be a perfect complement for this. When it comes to demographics, I feel that this is 100% unisex. It's soapy, it's clean, it's professional. It can be easily worn by a man or a woman or anything in between. It's just very, very classy and sophisticated. Age-wise though, I have to say that this leans a little bit more mature. It leans a little bit more experienced, especially in perfumery in general. If you're a fan of niche perfumery, if you're a fan of well-built perfumes with sophisticated ingredients, stuff that smells expensive, stuff that smells well-made, this is a fragrance for you. When it comes to imagery and narration, Les Indémodables is a little bit lackluster. None of the fragrances really transport me anywhere. They don't really tell me a story. They don't really tell me any narrative. That's absolutely fine. It's a very traditional French perfume house, focused on ingredients, focused on beautifully built fragrances. I'm not bashing it at all for this because, again, this fragrance is a beautiful 4-season wear, almost signature scent worthy in my opinion. I would wear this every day actually. It's just so beautiful, it's so elegant and sophisticated. And in order to keep these characteristics and actually to elevate them to disregard how this thing does, you have to sort of forego a little bit of narration. Otherwise, the scent would become a little bit too fatiguing, too cloying, and just too heavy on the mind. This one here beautifully blends in the background while still reminding you of its presence. It just wears so exceptionally well. But it's time to talk about some options for my reviewed fragrance. In the case of Ambre Suprême, I really wanted to lean into that natural ambergris, into that very effervescent, sparkling nature that this note has. I have 3 fragrances for you. The first one is by Labsolu. This one here is Ambra Grigia. I got this during Excellence. I already featured this in a couple videos. This is a very simple ambergris fragrance with natural ambergris. This is a very special fragrance because it comes across as really, really light. It has no gimmicks, no frills. This is basically only ambergris. It's light, it wears light, you can spray a ton of it on. It's not as heavy as Ambre Suprême, it's not as complex whatsoever. It just features ambergris in its purest form. The ambergris here is a little bit less nuanced, a little bit less complex, but it still has a lot of facets to it. This basically comes across as a very light, likable marine scent. It has a little bit of that saltiness, a tiny bit of that funky ambergris note, but overall it's extremely wearable. And I spray a ton of it on. I got it because of that. This is 125 ml, and I just spray it liberally. I spray it to not use Ambre Suprême. I spray it to get sort of the same vibe with a little bit more of a lighter touch without impacting that fragrance that I'm so protective of. This stays on clothes for a super long time, on skin not so much, but it's overall such a pleasant wear experience, especially when I want to break from the heavier fragrances in my collection. Labsolu is a new brand which is still very much unknown. They have a very traditional Italian style of perfumery. They're very simple and straightforward. All the fragrances basically feature one note in the style of Profumo Roma or Peri Monte Carlo, but not as long lasting. They're all very light. They're all very subtle. I just like the style. Are these worth trying out? Scent profile wise, it's an easy yes. But overall, given the asking price, I would expect a little bit more punch from these fragrances, a little bit more longevity. It's a cool brand nonetheless. The second fragrance that I want to showcase is one that I've been wearing a lot lately, just because I like the note of ambergris and I really like how this fragrance portrays it. This one here is Bortnikoff's Amber Colonia. This fragrance is actually quite similar to Ambre Suprême in concept. It doesn't wear the same way, it doesn't have the same vibe, it doesn't have the same smell, but the idea behind it is actually quite similar. So this is a light, fresh, fruity fragrance. It's a nice citrusy, zingy fragrance with an ambergris base. The ambergris here serves to prolong the fragrance, to prolong the cologne feel, giving it a little bit more interestingness. The ambergris in here is definitely a lot more animalic and less refined than the French variant, but overall it has a very clean floral feel to it. This fragrance opens up with beautiful tart citruses, which are immediately followed by sweet florals. It smells like going on vacation. It smells like the idea of going to Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii, by the way, but it just smells so fun, so invigorating. It's a stark difference from the sophisticated, classy feel of Ambre Suprême. It's not as professional, not as well done. This is a little bit more messy, but the ingredients in here are top quality and you can really smell that. I like this. Again, it's super fun. This will be a terrific summer wear. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more niche smelling. It's a little bit more weird smelling. The ambergris here, I think it's actually two types of ambergris. There's white and brown, and the brown apparently is even more animalic, less refined naturally by the sun and by the elements. It smells very different from everything else. The devil's in the details. The fine nuances in here are what make this what it is. Is it worth the asking price? I'm not really sure. The longevity could be definitely a lot better. Ambre Suprême is so much better in this regard. But overall, this is a fun scent and I'm happy I have it. Last but not least, we have a weird one. This one here is Ambre Blue by YS Uzac. YS Uzac is another one of those unknown Swiss brands which have a very vague brand identity and intent. This fragrance, and I really even struggle calling it a fragrance, is basically all about taking these two very exclusive, rare, natural ingredients, in this case ambergris and oud, and just cramming them together into a fragrance. Surprisingly, these two ingredients, which on paper appear to be very clashing, somehow come together here. You get a little bit of that marine funkiness, you get a little bit of that woody oudiness. It's just overall very heavy. It's much darker than everything I mentioned before. It's a weird experiment in perfumery. I would call this an experiment rather than a fragrance. It's almost an ode to ingredients. It's an ode to these luxurious ingredients. It smells good. I like it. It lasts a ton of time. It definitely has a unique imprint to it. But again, I wouldn't necessarily call it a fragrance, and I don't really respect it as a fragrance just because it comes across as a little bit messy. It comes across as unnecessarily luxurious in a way. Again, it's all about the luxurious ingredients. I actually really like the output and scent profile of this, despite all my criticism, and especially because I got this in a trade. I'll be holding on to this, I'll be keeping this. It's such a rare sight. It's also super expensive at over 500 bucks. This is not a strong recommendation just because it's so freaking weird. It's just so overly luxurious. I don't really support this type of perfumery, just cramming together everything expensive. This in my mind comes across as the perfumery equivalent of a Wagyu steak with gold leaf on top. It's just so unnecessary. It smells interesting, it smells funky, I like wearing it. It's 100 ml, so I have tons of wear in there, but overall, again, not really recommended. I just wanted to feature it because it's so unique and so different. But back to Ambre Suprême for my final overview and recommendations. As As you may suspect, this is a very easy, very strong recommendation. The house of Les Indémodables in general is super strongly recommended. If you don't have it already, get yourself the Discovery Kit. It's an amazing entry level to this world. If you love the language of perfumery, if you love high-end ingredients, if you like the idea of very well-built perfumes on a traditional level, that Discovery set is so affordable. Basically, you get 12 samples of 3 ml each for about 50-ish bucks. It's a steal for what you get, and you can sample Ambre Suprême and all of the other magical fragrances from Les Indémodables. Ambre Suprême itself, again, is one of my favorite fragrances of all time. I can't recommend it enough. It's so special. Nothing else smells like this. It just smells so special, luxurious, elegant, and sophisticated while still being understated. I love this fragrance. I love talking about it. I could talk about this fragrance for hours. But enough said, this is a very, very strong recommendation. It's basically my reference for this sort of scent. It's the best, clean, professional, soapy scent out there, in my opinion, bar none. Get yourself a sample of Ambre Suprême. It's totally worth it. Give it time though. Let it develop. Let the ambergris show its head. You will be hooked in no time. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. It's never taken for granted. As usual, many more reviews to come. See you in the next one, and cheers.